Hi, and welcome to your Urban Connection. Remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is seldom duplicated. Now, I want to get right into this story that's been coming, whether you all have seen it coming or not, and I don't know how you could not have, about the headline in the morning paper. And the headline reads, Spirit Aerosystems to announce up to 450 layoffs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot be shocked at that news. Because if you've been keeping up with the news for the last couple of months, you had to have seen this coming. I mean, it all started, well, it might have started before then, but what really brought this to light was when an airplane, 737 MAX, flying under the Boeing banner, had a door sucked off in flight from the aircraft. Luckily and fortunately, there were no serious injuries and certainly no fatalities and no plane crash. And again, I emphasize luckily and fortunately. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain something to you. This thing with Boeing and Spirit is the manufacturer of most of the fuselages for the Boeing MAX jets. And they've been having problems with Boeing MAX jets for much longer than a couple of months. As a matter of fact, they've had a couple of them crash. Now, but this latest incident that involved, I believe it was an Air Canada airline and a Boeing 737 MAX jet. When the door was sucked off and it raised eyebrows throughout the aircraft airline industry. It caught the attention of the FAA and it caught the attention of Boeing executives as well as executives at Spirit Aerospace, or whatever they call it. Now, I've been saying ever since then, ladies and gentlemen, that this was a wake-up call for Boeing and Spirit. Now, those of you that will remember, Boeing used to own Spirit, and they separated and sold off the Spirit to other owners. And now, of course, they're in talks to repurchase Spirit and make it a part of Boeing once again. Now, what brought this all about? Well, it appears that the FAA did not have enough inspectors in its unit to provide the proper inspections that were necessary for all these aircraft that are flying in the United States and other countries' airspace. These planes were flying under the Boeing banner, and they were purchased by all of the major U.S. airlines. And Boeing, at one time, had a majority of the aircraft sales in the United States. Now, what happened when this door was sucked off this airplane? A lot of, and I want to say several, I don't know if it was a lot, but several current and former Boeing employees began to speak and tell. In other words, some of them became whistleblowers. And they told about what they had experienced and what they had seen and what they had witnessed during their employment at Spirit Aerosystems and at Boeing. And they talked about the quality was on the decline while the profits were on the increase. In other words, they were suggesting that Boeing was putting profits before people. Now, ladies and gentlemen, business where you're dealing, I'm talking about, I'm not talking about continent, and you're going to comp of your product. You're lucky. Toes that they didn't have at least one major aircraft fatality off these Boeing Max jets. Now, like I said, when this stuff first came down, they started playing the blame game. Some were pointing fingers at Boeing. Some was pointing fingers at Spirit. Some were even pointing fingers at the FAA. Somebody somewhere dropped the ball. Inspections were left up to Boeing, the FAA, admitting that they were under, they didn't have enough inspectors to go around. So they basically left it up to Boeing to do self-inspections, to do self-quality inspections on these fuselages that were built, some here at Spirit Aerospace and some over in another country. But it was up to Boeing to supply the inspectors and the inspections on these aircraft to be sure the flying public was safe on one of their jets. And it comes to find out, the quality inspections never occurred. The whistleblowers claim that they tried to make the Boeing officials aware that there were flaws in their product, that they saw major flaws. As a matter of fact, you had some former Boeing employees who refused to even fly a Boeing Max jet. And there are some even today that won't fly a Boeing Max jet. There are members of the flying public that now refuse to board a Boeing Max jet. Fuselages made by Spirit Aerosystems and others. So, ladies and gentlemen, when you have a situation like that, you know what happens? Boeing starts to lose market share. And guess what? Boeing has major competition in the name of Airbus. Now, after this incident with this door being sucked off, that was the straw that broke the camel's back with some major airlines. And some of the airlines who had maybe had orders in with Boeing for some jets, because they buy these planes in advance, okay? But some of them have decided to look elsewhere to make future purchases. In other words, they're going to replace Boeing as their major supplier of passenger jets. Yeah, when that happens, then Boeing has to give an order to Spirit and other makers of fuselages that we're going to have to slow down on the number of fuselages we're producing because our sales numbers are dwindling. Now, what happens when they reduce the number of fuselages that Spirit is producing? It means less planes, means less people to build the planes. They don't need as many people. So you should have seen 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe, anybody in or out of the aircraft industry should have seen this coming. You knew for a fact that some heads had to roll somewhere. And that not only was heads in the corporate office, but that meant heads on the assembly line. Somebody was going to be losing their job. And you know what? 450 people is really just a drop in the bucket as opposed to what could have happened. Thank goodness there was not a or some major air crashes resulting in casualties. Or we could be looking at a shuttered Spirit Aerosystems. Okay? Now, the FAA has fined Boeing for violating a previous contract that they had. Okay? And the whistleblowers are saying that they have been retaliated against, some have been fired, and under suspicious conditions in the last 30 days, at least 2 of these so-called whistleblowers have died of mysterious circumstances. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to tell you that Boeing dodged a major bullet. This is going to hurt. They're going to suffer. Sales are going to be down. They're going to lose money. They're going to be fined big time by the FAA. But the FAA cannot stand by and allow faulty planes when they know they're faulty. And allegedly, if you listen to the whistleblowers, some of the executives at Boeing and Spirit knew that they were faulty, or at least they were told. But in some of the cases, the whistleblowers say they were told to shut up and not talk about it. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, sweep it under the rug. Now, that is playing with the life and the lives of members of the flying public. How would you feel? You stepped on an airplane, knowing that the company that owns that airplane, the company that built that fuselage, the company that built that airplane, knew that plane had or could have had faulty parts, components, some flaws in the building process, in the assembly process, but they allowed you to board, and they guarantee promising you're flying safely when you fly a Boeing plane, only to put you and your life in harm's way. Like I said, it's very fortunate that there was not at least a or some fatalities from planes falling out of the sky. Not a door falling, but a plane falling out of the sky. So, like I said, the employees at Spirit Aerosystems, the flying public, the Boeing company, anybody having anything to do with airlines should have known this day was coming. It had to happen. It happens in automobile manufacturers. You know, that is why they have recalls all the time, ladies and gentlemen. But you see, you do a recall when you acknowledge that your automobiles might have a faulty product or a faulty assembly or something that could cause your plane to crash due to nothing having to do with your driving abilities. They recall it. Now, what is that called? That is called being proactive, acting before something happens. But see, in the aircraft industry, ladies and gentlemen, apparently they didn't believe in being proactive. So therefore, as long as the money's rolling in, the profits are rolling in, the shareholders are being paid big dividends, huge profits. The CEOs are making millions of dollars a year. The airline is making billions of dollars. Let's keep rolling. We've got to have those planes in the air, because that's the only way we make money is with those planes in the air. And if we announce a recall, that means that plane's got to be sitting on the ground for a period of time. And we're losing money every day that plane sits on the ground. So we're going to keep those planes in the air and keep our fingers crossed and our toes crossed, hoping that nothing bad happens. But luckily, the worst thing that happened was the door was sucked off of one of those 737 MAX jets. Wow, it was 30, 40, 50,000 feet in the air. Can you imagine being on a plane, sitting comfortably strapped in? I hope he's strapped in your seat, and a door behind you or in front of you, whatever, is sucked off of the cockpit in flight. Man, that has to be a scary, scary feeling. But that also has to be a rude awakening that you have to look out for yourself, because not everybody who's in a position is looking out for you. And that includes some airline manufacturers, some airline executives, and maybe some airline mechanics. But anyhow, so ladies and gentlemen, this thing with Spirit, well, it sounds bad, and it is bad, but it's not as bad as it could have been. But I want to say one other thing. This should send a message to the powers that be in our city, on our city council, our city manager, Sedgwick County commissioners, our U.S. senators. We've got to, and I've been saying this for at least 30 to 40 years, ladies and gentlemen. We're known as the air capital of the world. But you've got to diversify this economy and stop putting your total dependence on the airline industry. Bring in some high tech. Bring in some more healthcare facilities. I remember the time when there were furniture manufacturers clamoring to get into this thing, but the powers that be didn't want them. They wanted to be dependent totally on aircraft. I remember when Boeing alone hired 25, 30, 35,000 people. But this is a different world. This is a different time. You can't rely on that. Because you see, I also remember at the time when they were doing that, Boeing depended almost totally on the military. It was military contracts that kept them alive and thriving. But those military contracts have an expiration date on them. And so they'll be thriving for 4 or 5 years, and then they suffer a year and a half of layoffs, okay, when the contract left. And then they had to go through it till they can win another big contract. So today, of course, they do them mostly. They do still do an awful lot of military, but they do mostly now passenger jets, passenger work. And they do it not only for the United States carriers, they do it for many other countries' carriers. But a lot of those carriers right now are shifting from Boeing and putting their dollars in the hands of, in the pockets of Airbus. Okay? So I just want to tell you that, this is not a surprise to me. I don't want to say looking forward to it, but I've been aware that it could and would probably happen. And this morning, it did. Right? So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I want to say. Boeing is attempting to purchase, and I guess I should say repurchase, Spirit Aerosystems so that they can get control of these flaws that are taking place at Spirit. And the only way they can do it is to have ownership. And that way they can put their own people in there and make sure that these products are manufactured to specifications. And the quality takes this proper place ahead of the profits of the company. Because, you know, 2 or 3 major fatalities can wipe out a company. Okay? Thanks for watching.